Good evening, everyone. So, the topic that we're going to discuss is about economic globalization, poverty and equality, global income inequality, the third world and the global south, and the global city. So, what is economic globalization? Economic globalization refers to the increasing interdependence of world economies as a result of growing scale of cross-border trade of commodities and services, flow of international capital, and wide and rapid spread of technologies. So, ang globalisasyong pang-ekonomiya tumutukoy sa pagtaas ng pagtutulungan ng mga ekonomiya sa daigdig bilang resulta ng lumalaking sukat ng kalakalan at serbisyo. Daloy nito ng pandaigdigang kapital at malawak at mabilis na paglaganap ng mga teknolohiya. So it is refers to the increasing interdependence or dependence. So we are all dependent to each other, na ang ibig sabihin ay hindi tayo mabubuhay at hindi tayo mag-exist sa isang country kung wala yung ibang bansa. At sa cross-border trade, it is trade between neighboring countries conducted by vulnerable, small, unregistered traders. So typically, it is proximity trade involving the move of product between markets close to the borders. Trading of goods and services is rapidly increasing in each place of each country and whole world, and this lead to economic globalization. So how does economic globalization affect poverty and equality? Globalization and poverty both are currently popular and controversial issue. There was a time when most regions were economically self-sufficient. Locally produced foods, fuels, and raw materials were generally processed for local consumption. Trade between different regions was quite limited. Today, the economies of most countries are so interconnected that they form part of a single, interdependent global economy as far as globalization impact is concerned, and its effects of economic growth, employment, and income distribution, and also income inequality as well as poverty. The Swedish statistician Hans Rosling once said, "The 1 to 2 billion poorest in the world who don't have food for the day suffer from the worst disease, globalization deficiency. The way globalization is occurring could be much better, but the worst thing is not being part of it." So the concept of poverty is the lack of certain amount of material possessions or money. Kanang walay makuan na job, or hindi na sa po ng problema is kanang kwarta. So and na po siya tulo ka concept na ginaatubang, which may include social, economic, and political elements. So na po tayo ginatawag na absolute poverty. So mao ni siya ang most and widely held na para masabtan nato kung unsa jud ang poverty. So poverty is hunger, poverty is lack of shelter, walay mapuy-an, kagutom. Poverty is being sick and not being able to see a doctor. Poverty is not having access to school, dili maka-eskwela, and not knowing how to read. Poverty is not having a job, is fear for the future, living one day at a time. Poverty is powerlessness, lack of representation, and freedom. So this is the extreme definition of poverty, na kanang walang-wala jud kaayo. So it is the worst and luoy kayo na kanang pamumuhay, na kaning walang-wala kayo. So sa globalization of poverty, napoy negative impact. So this is the global commerce is increasing, dominated by developed countries which seek to maximizing profits, increase gap between the rich and the poor, income inequalities, competitions among developing countries. It has lowered the per capita income of the farmers, increased the rural indebtedness, So, in conclusion, the relation between globalization and poverty is complex. Though makakuan man ta nga ang globalization is na siya mga negative impact, but na po siya dako nga great role to develop the whole world, and naga progress should be made, nagahimo or para ma-reflect sa usa ka nation nga kung unsa man ang mga panghitabo o nagapresent siya sa economic dispensation, so that na ma-develop ang usa ka country, then para maging strong compete in the wider confluence of globalization.
So, my topic is all about the global income inequality. So, sa ating interaction, nagkakaroon po tayo ng social inequality, prejudice, discrimination, etc. There are many things that we will encountering as we go on in our interaction as a social actor. But we will going to expand our horizon, talking about the countries in outside of our jurisdiction or sakop. There are also happening na tinatawag nating global income inequality. So, inequality doesn't only exist in our community, in our society, in our country, but also among countries. There are countries which are economically matured, more powerful than other countries, and ends up become influential in our global community. This leads to condition of a global inequality where developing countries end up being controlled by influenced by the developed countries. So from the world developing countries, so developing country is refers to a nation with as less with a less developed industrial base and sovereign state with less or human development indicator or HDI than other developed countries. Per capita income or gross domestic product or GDP is also include defining developing country. So it means I mentioned some important concept na dapat nating maintindihan. So ano nga ba ang human development indicator or HDI? So ito yung life expectancy, education, and purchasing parity. So, life expectancy, the existence of a human or a person. So, gaano ka-healthy yung mga tao sa isang lugar. Then, the education. So, nakapag-aral ba ang mga tao in that kana na exact na lugar? Marami bang nakapagtapos? Naging free ba ang education sa kanilang lugar? Next one is the power parity. So, ito yung the way of living or standard of living of that particular country. I-check ang mga level kung saan nabibilang ang mga bansang ito. So humanata sa developing country, sa developed country na punta. It's also called an industrial country, has a mature and sophisticated economy, usual measured by a gross domestic product or GDP, and average income per resident. So average income per resident. Developed countries have advanced technology, infrastructure, and have diverse industrial and service sector. So, based sa ako ang na-experience or na bantayan sa atong country is dili jud siya developed country. So, developing country siya, which is dili pasakto ang income sa Filipino people na di pa makasustain sa pamilya, kulang-kulang pa jud. So, a lot of Filipinos nang abroad tungod kay kulang jud ang ato ang income diri sa Philippines. So kanina na-mention po nako ang per capita income. It is measure of the amount of money earned per person in a nation or geographic region. So ito yung certain income ng isang bansa. And the gross domestic product or GDP is a final value of a goods, service produced within the geographic boundaries of the country during the specific period of time. Example for that is the food, clothing, and healthcare. So inequality can also outcome of the relative strength of a state as a compare with another terms of a strategic importance of development assistance. Countries with many resources tend to have more power. So countries that send official development assistance or ODA in the form of loans and grants are the position to dictate their policy and condition. So the example for this is the China and the Philippines relationship. So ODA, ito yung mga resources na kayang i-grant ng isang bansa to develop to the developing country. So ang Philippines is a developing country. So we don't have funds enough, so naghiram lang ta sa China para sa atong like sa Build program. Ang Philippines naghiram jud ta sa China. So dito natin makikita na mas taas sa atin ang China. So ang China nag-example na siya sa developed na ang China. So ang Philippines developing country pa lang. So, dahil kapag develop na siya, meron na siyang capacity to grant a loan for a developing country. So, morning naitabo sa sa China between Philippines relationship. Official Development Assistant or ODA is an internal financing development, particularly for the poorest country. The next one is the military strength. Is also a source of inequality. There are countries with a superior military competence are able to bully the weaker one. So, siya. In issue of a West Philippine Sea between China and the Philippines. Alam naman natin na ito na meron tayong island na tinatawag natin na Dispute Island. Nagbigay ng decision ang International Court na pag-aari ito ng Philippines, pero ang China patuloy pa rin na nila itong inaangkin. So dahil yan sa kanilang strength, sa kanilang mga military resources, then kailangan jud nato na ipa-strengthen ang ato ang military.
The Third World and Global South. The Third World is an outdated and derogatory phrase that has been used historically to describe a class of economically developing nations. Countries that are not aligned to USA nor USSR, AALE countries such as Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and other nations that are not aligned, undeveloped, underdeveloped, or developing countries. Challenges of Third World. First, the basic amenities. The basic amenities, ito yung mga bagay na nagpapadali sa mga ginagawa ng tao. Next is the infrastructure. Ito yung mga building katulad ng mga hospital, school, mall, at iba pa. Next, social. Ang social, ito yung ating society. And the last one is the economic. So, ang economic, ito yung sa ating ekonomiya. Muna ang mga basic amenities. So first, the shortage of food kasi nga kulang sila ng mga resources kaya ang mga food nila ay laging short at kulang-kulang pa sa kanila. Scarcity of drinking water. Dahil nga sa kakulangan ng mga resources, yung tubig nila ay hindi pa sapat sa kanila, kumbaga kinulang sila ng mga fresh water. Proper sanitation, cleanliness, dahil nga sa kakulangan ng tubig, yung mga tubig na dapat pangligo na nila ay iniinom nila para lang matustusan ang kanilang uhaw. Health and hygiene, home to disease. So ito kasagaran ang mga kabataan sa ilaha is kanang mga malnourished because ang ilang mga pagkaon is dili healthy. Infrastructure, energy crisis, transportation, communication. So dito kulang sila og mga technology kaya wala silang supply ng kuryente. Social. Social have a social and cultural exclusion. Ito yung may maraming population, ngunit kulang sila ng mga basic amenities tulad ng schools and hospitals. Self-centered, travel or visa restriction, population, environmental degradation. Economic, overpopulation. Dito wala silang family planning kaya overpopulation. Poverty, exploitation, sex, slavery. Dito yung mga ibang kababaihan, ibinibinta nila ang kanilang katawan upang maitawid nila ang gutom. Unemployment, this is the main reason why na ibaligya sa uban ng babae ang ilang lawas para lang mahawa sila sa kalisod. Illiteracy, lack of professionals. Diri tungod sa kalisod nila kung naay magkasakit sa ilaha imbis na sa ospital dalhon, magmantinila lang sila sa mga albularyo kay diri ang mga tao is mga uneducated, wala sila yung mga doktor na makatambal kung naay magsakit sa ilaha. Global South comprises 49 countries less developed. Diri makita na to ang 49 countries but the other is not fully developed. Next, use an alternative to the Third World during Cold War to distinguish the developing nations. So, yung Global South gi-substitute sa Third World para ma-distinguish yung mga developing nation. So, nations are often described as a newly industrialized or the process of industrializing. And the last one is unable to evolve an indigenous technology appropriate to have their own resources. That's why ang Third World at Global South ay nakadepende sa First World and Second World kay kulang sila og mga resources.
My report is all about the Global City. Global City, also called World City or sometimes Alpha City or World Center, is a city which is a primary node in the global economic network. Cities in the globalizing world, although globalization certainly affects rural and urban areas, global forces are centered in cities. Ang Alpha City daw ay tinatawag ding pandaigdigang lungsod or pandaigdigang sentro means nasa tunga ay isang lungsod na pangunahing node or ukol sa global economic network. Ang mga lungsod sa pandaigdigang globalisasyon, bagamat tiyak na nakakaapekto ang globalisasyon sa kanayunan at kalungsuran, ang mga pandaigdigang pwersa ay nakasentro sa mga lungsod. Global operations are centralized and this is where we can most clearly observe the phenomena connected to their operations, such as shift in the employment landscape, the creation of strong alliance, the growth of opulent real estate, the emergence of new models of local government, the consequences of organized crime, the spread of corruption, the disintegration of informal network, or the geographical and social exclusion of a specific population group. Ang mga pandaigdigang operasyon ay sentralisado at dito natin mas malinaw na matutunghayan ang mga penomena na konektado sa kanilang mga operasyon, tulad ng mga pagbabago sa tanawin ng trabaho, ang paglikha ng malakas na alyansa, ang paglago ng masaganang ari-arian, ang paglitaw ng mga bagong modelo ng lokal na pamahalaan, ang mga kahihinatnan ng organisadong krimen, ang pagkalat ng katiwalian, ang pagkawatak-watak ng mga informal na network, o ang geographical at panlipunang pagbubukod ng mga partikular na pangkat ng populasyon. Globalization is spatial. This statement means two things. Number one, globalization is spatial because it occurs in the physical spaces. Number two, globalization is spatial because what makes it move is the fact that it is based in places. Dalawang bagay ang ibig sabihin ng pahayag na ito. Number 1, globalisasyon sa espesyal dahil nangyayari ito sa mga pisikal na espasyo. Number 2, ang globalisasyon ay special dahil ang pagpapagalaw dito ay ang katotohanang ito ay nakabase sa mga lugar. A global city is a metropolis that is typically seen as a key hub in the world economy. The idea, which derives from geography and urban studies, hold that in accordance with a hierarchy of importance to the operation of international system of finance and trade. Globalization may be seen as being substantially generated, aided, and performed in a strategic geographic site. The most complicated of them is the global city, where socio-economic factors within a metropolis have a real immediate impact on world politics. Ang isang pandaigdigang lungsod ay isang pinakamahalagang lungsod ng bansa na karaniwang nakikita bilang isang pangunahing sentro sa ekonomiya ng mundo. Ang ideya na nagmula sa geografiya at mga pag-aaral sa lungsod ay naniniwala na alinsunod sa isang hierarchy ng kahalagahan sa pagpapatakbo ng international na sistem ng pananalapi at kalakalan. Ang globalisasyon ay maaaring makikita bilang malaking nabuo, tinutulungan at ginampanan sa mga estratehikong geograpikong lugar. The use of global city as opposed to megacity was popularized by sociologist Saskia Sassen. In her 1991 work, The Global City, New York, London, Tokyo, through the term word city to describe cities that control a disproportionate amount of global business dates to at least the May 1886 description of Liverpool by the Illustrated London News. Patrick Geddes also used the term word city later in 1915. Cities can also fall from such categorization as in case of cities that have become less cosmopolitan and less internationally renowned in the current era. Limiting the discussion of global allies to these three metropolises, however, is proving more and more restrictive. The global economy has changed significantly since Sassen wrote her book on any account of economic power of the cities. Today, must take note of the latest development. Ang paggamit ng global city bilang kabaligtaran sa megacity ay pinasikat ng sociologist na si Saskia Sassen sa kanyang trabaho noong 1991. Ang global city, New York, London, Tokyo, bagaman ang terminong word city ay naglalarawan sa mga lungsod na kumukontrol sa di-proportional na halaga ng pandaigdigang negosyo, ay petsa sa hindi bababa sa Mayo 1886. Paglalarawan ng Liverpool sa pamamagitan ng The Illustrated London News. Ginamit din ni Patrick Geddes ang terminong lungsod sa daigdig mamaya noong 1915. Ang mga lungsod ay maaari ding mahulog mula sa naturang kategorya tulad ng isang kaso ng mga lungsod na naging hindi ganoong cosmopolitan at hindi gaanong kilala sa buong mundo sa kasalukuyang panahon. Ang paglilimita sa talakayan ng mga pandaigdigang uli sa tres metropolises na ito gayunpaman ay nagpapatunay na higit na mahigpit ang pandaigdigang ekonomiya ay nagbago ng malaki mula nang isinulat ni Sassen ang kanyang libro at anumang account ng pang-ekonomiyang kapangyarihan ng mga lungsod ngayon ay dapat tandaan ng pinakabagong pag-unlad. Today, global city become culturally diverse in a global city. One can try cuisine from different parts of the world because of their large Turkish population. For example, Berlin and Tokyo offer some of the best Turkish food one can find outside of Turkey. Manila is not very global because of the death of foreign residents. Ngayon, ang mga pandaigdigang lungsod ay naging magkakaibang kultura. Sa isang pandaigdigang lungsod, maaaring subukan ang mga lutuin mula sa iba't ibang bahagi ng mundo. dahil sa kanilang malaking populasyon ng Turko. Halimbawa, ang Berlin at Tokyo ay nag-aalok ng ilan sa mga pinakamahusay na Turkish na pagkain na makikita sa labas ng Turko. Hindi masyadong global ang Manila dahil sa pagkamatay ng mga dayuhang residente. Global cities evoke ideas of quick-paced, thrilling, and cosmopolitan lifestyles. They may also be places of extreme poverty, inequality, and violence. Losers and winners are produced by global cities. According to Richard Florida Denser, settlement patterns result in energy savings. Apartment buildings, for instance, are more energy efficient to heat and cool than detached suburban houses. According to ecologists who have discovered that cities and metros reduce human encroachment and natural habitats by concentrating their population in smaller areas. Also, people have a tendency to drive less in a city with robust public transit system reducing carbon emission. Ang mga pandaigdigang lungsod ay nagbubunga ng mga ideya ng mabilis, kapanapanabik at cosmopolitan na pamumuhay. Maaari rin silang maging mga lugar na matinding kahirapan, hindi pagkakapantay-pantay at karahasan. Ang mga natalo at nanalo ay ginawa ng mga pandaigdigang lungsod. Ayon kay Richard Florida, ang mas siksik na mga pattern ng settlement ay nagresulta sa pagtitipid ng enerhiya. Ang mga apartment building halimbawa ay mas matipid sa enerhiya sa init at lamig kaysa sa mga nakahiwalay na suburban na bahay. Ayon sa mga ecologist na natuklasan na ang mga lungsod at metro ay binabawasan ng pagpasok ng tao sa mga natural na tirahan sa pamamagitan ng pagtutuon ng kanilang mga populasyon sa mas maliit na lugar. Gayun din, ang mga tao ay may posibilidad na magmaneho ng mas kaunti sa mga lungsod na may matatag na sistema ng pampublikong sasakyan na nagpapababa ng mga carbon emission. Conclusion: global cities, as noted in this lesson, are sites and medium of globalization. There are therefore material representation of the phenomenon. Through them, we see the best of globalization. There are places that create exciting fusion of culture and ideas. There are also places that generate tremendous wealth. However, there remains sight of great inequality where global servants serve global entrepreneur. The question of how globalization can be made more just is partly a question or how people make their cities more just. Konklusyon sa araling ito ay ang mga pandaigdigang lungsod tulad ng nabanggit sa araling ito ay mga site at daluyan ng globalisasyon. Ang mga ito sa makatuwid ay mga material na representasyon ng kababalaghan. Sa pamamagitan ng mga ito, nakikita natin ang pinakamahusay na globalisasyon. Ang mga ito ay mga lugar na lumikha ng mga kapanapanabik na pagsasanib ng kultura at mga ideya. Ang mga ito ay mga lugar din na lumikha ng napakalaking kayamanan. Gayunpaman, nanatili silang mga site ng malaking hindi kapantay-pantay kung saan naglilingkod ang mga pandaigdigang tagapaglingkod sa mga pandaigdigang negosyante. Ang tanong kung paano gawin mas makatarungan ang globalisasyon ay bahagyang tanong kung paano ginagawang mas makatarungan ng mga tao ang kanilang mga lungsod.